Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to Life on the Wrist. Hope you guys are doing well today. We're going to be continuing a series where we talk about different watch complications that you can find in vintage but also modern watches. It's been a really great success. I've enjoyed talking about some of the complications you can find, which is really a fun part of watch collecting. Obviously, the hours, minutes, and seconds that you get on a typical clock are very useful, but the other complications can actually provide some sort of enjoyment for you as you wear them, especially if you're looking in the vintage realm of watches, because you're able to experience a lot of different designs that all these companies have come up with. Vintage watches, there's a lot of creativity. Not saying the modern watches there isn't, but there's definitely a different feel for vintage watches. The complication I'm going to be talking about today is the alarm complication. This is a very unique complication. It's a complication that I have hailed as being one of the best complications that you can possibly get in a watch. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of history about the complication, talk through how it works, and then I'm actually going to show you a close-up of how this complication works in a watch that I have with me today. So without further ado, let's just dive straight into it. So the alarm complication, like it sounds like, is a mechanical alarm hand that is on the dial of your watch, and it allows for you to set a time for when you want the alarm to sound. This is, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, this sounds pretty basic. Any type of watch actually has it, but from a mechanical perspective, mechanical movement perspective, this is a very difficult complication to actually come up with. One of the reasons why I think it's one of the best complications you can get is when you think about the different complications that have hammers in the mechanical movement. I think of like sonnerie or minute repeater watches, and those are considered very sort of high horology complications. An alarm function has something very, very similar. So that's why I really love this complication. The first sort of patent that was released for a mechanical alarm complication was in 1908 by Eterna. They patented an alarm wristwatch, which they produced in 1914. This wasn't the best rollout of a watch because you have hammers that are hitting on the side of the case of the watch. This can play with the accuracy of the accuracy of the time that the watch keeps. And back then you didn't have an iPhone that you could kind of cross-reference with your watch, so it was a lot more important that your watch was accurate. So there wasn't a lot of great success for that. In 1947, Vulcain decided to release their own alarm functioned watch, and this was their famous Cricket model. This has become one of the most sought after and very, very highly desirable vintage alarm complicated watches out there. It has two case backs that sort of house the sound of the alarm complication, and like I said, is very, very desirable. There was another watch company that released a alarm complication piece, and that was Le Coultre, or Jaeger Le Coultre, or JLC as many people refer to it simply, and this was their Memovox watch. This watch has two crowns, alarm complication, and there were a lot of different variations that came out of this watch. The Memovox is a watch that I've discussed on this channel as being one of the best vintage watches that you can possibly buy. So obviously you can see my love for the alarm complications, but also for the JLC Memovox models. To dive a little bit into how this watch actually works, so what you have in an alarm complication is you obviously are going to have your hours, minutes, and seconds hands, and then whatever complications you desire to have with that. You then have another hand, which is your alarm hand, and this allows for you to point a time where you would like your alarm to go off at. Most of the time these watches have two crowns, and so you're able to obviously wind one to wind the mainspring to generate power so that your watch can tell time. But then there's another crown that is used, which is wound to say, hey, I want this alarm to sound at this time. The watch that we're going to be looking at, and we'll flip perspectives and I'll show you how it works, but is this Memovox. This is a 1950s Memovox that we have here, and as you can see, there are two crowns on the top and I guess 3 o'clock and at 2 o'clock and at 4 o'clock, which do just that. And then there's actually an inner disc on this specific model. There's an inner disc which you turn with the top crown, which allows you to point the time to when you want the alarm to go off. So So that is how the complication works. Once what happens is once the hours hand reaches where your alarm hand is, the watch ends up sending energy to these hammers, and basically this hammer hits against the side of the case, making almost like a cricket sound, which is why the original watch from Vulcan is known as the cricket, because it makes sort of a vibration sound on your wrist. So it hits against the side of the case, and that is your alarm. On the Memovox and on the Vulcan, this happens every 12 hours, and so you actually can have 12 hours of time. What's really interesting about this complication is, like I said, when you think back to the 1950s, you probably didn't have something that you could wear on your wrist to notify you of some sort of appointment in a given day. And so if you think about, every time that we have an alarm that wakes us up in the morning, or perhaps you have to do something specifically at a specific time in your day, or take medication at a specific time. All of those things we might actually take for granted, the fact that we have an alarm that can tell us to do that. Back then, this really was a tool to allow you to know when it is that time to do something. So a very useful complication, heavily used, and it's pretty incredible to think that type of complication is used in a mechanical watch like this. Let me flip perspectives. I'm going to do an over-the-shoulder look so you can take a look at how the alarm function actually works on this watch. Alright, so let's take a look at this complication. So like I said, we're going to be looking at this Le Coultre Memovox from the 1950s. As I said, this has an alarm complication. The way that I described it to you is it essentially has your hours, your minutes, and your seconds hand, and then you also have this inner disc which allows you to set a time for when you want the alarm complication to work. So like I said, the bottom crown of this watch allows you to sort of set the time, and then the top one allows you to set a alarm. And so before I wind it, let me just show you how the disc works. So what I'm able to do is essentially I'm able to turn the disc and set whatever time I'd like for when the alarm to go off. And so the way that it works, obviously, if you have it set at a specific hour, it's going to follow where the hour hand is. So right now, the alarm would go off at 1 o'clock. If you wanted half hours, you'd basically go halfway between the hours. So as an example, this would say, okay, at 10:30, I'd like an alarm to go off. This does come at sort of a disclaimer. It's hard to be as accurate as you possibly can with this, but that's another story. So like I said, the way that you do this is you essentially turn the crown of the watch to say, hey, I would like some power to go to the alarm complication. So this is telling the watch, okay, I'm going to have the alarm go off. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the crown to hit the hour hand here. That way you can kind of hear how it works. And what's going to happen is you're going to hear a click as soon as it hits the hour hand. I'm going to put the watch close to I'm going to bring the microphone a little bit closer so you can hear it. So what I'm going to do is turn the crown. And so you heard that little click, and that's basically saying, hey, I'm ready to hit the alarm. That's only because I have the crown out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push the crown in, and you're going to hear the the hammer start hitting the side of the case to have the alarm go off here. And so that's how it works. Pretty simple. You basically have a hammer on the side of the case here, hits against that, and as you can imagine, if you're wearing this on your wrist, that's going to be fairly evident when it goes off. You're going to definitely feel it. But that's basically how the complication works. I love it. I think it's such a unique complication, and like I said, is something that resonates with me because it's similar to a minute repeater, similar to those types of watches. So a very difficult complication to have, and associated with a lot of sort of high-end pieces that have a great movement construction. This is a really beautiful piece, and I'm so glad that we were able to get it in. So with that said, I'll flip perspectives so we can close out the video. Hope you guys enjoyed learning a little bit about the alarm complication that you can find in mechanical watches. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of the vintage versions of these, especially in this watch like the Memovox. I've done a ton of videos where I've discussed what I think is some of the best value that you can find in vintage watches, and the Memovox is one of them. But the Cricket is another example of a great watch you can pick up if you are looking to buy a vintage watch. If you are interested in the Memovox that we showed in this video, it is available in our store. You can check it out there. Let me know what you think about the alarm complication. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Is there anything I missed? Is there any other questions you have? I'd love to answer them. This series is a way that I can help educate you on the different complications you can find in watches, and so please let me know if you have more questions. I'd love to answer them. If you didn't notice, we have our Life on the Wrist crew neck. This was released very, very recently, so you should head over to the clothing, to our clothing line, which you can find on our website. If you want to pick yourself up one of these crew necks, it's pretty cool. Has the logo on the back. I really love it. You can get prepared for winter. If you like these types of videos, be sure to hit the subscribe button and join the Life on the Wrist family. And if you wouldn't mind hitting that like button for us, it really does help us out with the YouTube analytics. And with that said, guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and until next time.